What are the plans, the sustainable innovations, the strategies that have been thought of to bring in change, to make India a developed nation in terms of inclusive economic growth and human development parameters? These are some of the issues that will be addressed in our next session, Transformational Strategies for India. The chairperson is Dr. Purnendu Chatterjee. I would request him to please take a seat. Dr. Chatterjee is the chairperson, the chairman of the Chatterjee Group, the lead promoter of Haldia Petrochemicals. Some of his other areas of interest are aviation and real estate. In his unique bouquet of strengths, Dr. Chatterjee combines expertise in technology, in management consulting, and in international investing. Dr. Chatterjee, Dr. Purnendu Chatterjee. The session will also feature Mr. Y.C. Deveshwar, the chairman of ITC Limited, also a B.Tech in mechanical engineering from IIT Delhi. Mr. Deveshwar is a past president of CII, a member of the Board of Governors of the Indian School of Business, and the former chairman of the Society and Board of Governors of the Indian Institute of Management, Calcutta. He also serves on the National Executive Committee of some of India's premier trade and industry bodies. Our next participant in this session, Lord Kumar Bhattacharya. He became a professor of manufacturing systems at the University of Warwick and founded the Warwick Manufacturing Group in 1980. He has been a past member of the UK Council for Science and Technology. He has received innumerable awards and honors. He was made a life peer as Baron Bhattacharya and sits on the Labour benches in the House of Lords. Our last participant in this session, the Honorable Nancy Powell, the Ambassador of the United States to India. Ms. Powell was Director General of the United States Foreign Services, a position she assumed after serving as the US Ambassador to Nepal. She has also been the Ambassador to Pakistan and has held assignments in Africa and South Asia. Ladies and gentlemen, could I please call on stage Dr. Purnendu Chatterjee, Mr. Y.C. Deveshwar, Lord Kumar Bhattacharya, and Ambassador Powell.
Honorable Ambassador, Lord Bhattacharya, Mr. Yogi Deveshwar, fellow IITians, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great pleasure to be here and have the privilege of chairing a very interesting session. I think our inaugural addresses set the stage as to what IIT has done and what is expected of IITians going forward. I think being one of the greatest set of minds, there is an obligation for the elite to help in this transformation, to help make the life of the poorest of the poor to achieve inclusive growth. Now, the challenges going forward are many, and so what I would like to do is to set the stage for some of those challenges. But as many of the technology companies know, every challenge is an opportunity. And so although we look at the challenges, we look at the problems, we should look at them from the point of view of how to solve them. And I hope as many PANIIT gatherings have done in the past. Out of this PANIIT, also we come up with some actionable ideas. And I would expect also our fellow members of the delegation here will give us some concrete ideas as to what are the kinds of things that we can do as PANIIT, as IIT, going forward. Everybody mentioned that India is going through a testing time. The challenges of growth is huge. The drop of growth is essentially a problem because without growth, some of the social investments that are required for the poorest of the poor cannot be made. The macroeconomic imbalances needs to be corrected. You all know about some of these problems, so I'm not going to go into the details. I'm just mentioning what these problems are. There is policy paralysis, which comes into expressed as massive power failures to failures in many, many dimensions of the government. You all know about the problems that has been highlighted in the form of corruption. We have the problem of weather volatility. Whether it's man-made or not, I do not know, but clearly it is a problem that affects, again, the poorest of the poor. And I was in when Hurricane Sandy attacked the New York area, and I know what happens to the people in the low-lying areas. So we need corrections for that. Security threats, particularly in a connected world, there are different kinds of cybersecurity issues. Are we prepared for these challenges? Yesterday I heard a presentation on mobility payment systems, that can it really happen if we do not deal with the basic issues of safety and security of the connected network. There is also major headwinds. As we face some of these challenges, the world as used to be is no longer going to be the same going forward. There is 300 million labor force that's in US, Europe, and Japan that used to produce products for the world consumers and these laborers were paid roughly about $40,000 to $50,000. Now, China has introduced about 300 million new laborers in that at a very much lower cost. India can bring in an equivalent amount of labor force. Now, when there is an explosion of labor at lot lower prices, but we are not growing enough consumers, where does this labor get used? And this will create a problem. As we can see, Apple today announced they're going to start manufacturing in the United States. I think the globalization and the free trade, as you used to know, may not be there anymore to have us use export-driven growth as a vehicle to get out of it. So there are major headwinds, but there are also very important opportunities that are coming in from the side of massive global liquidity can help a capital-short country with growth like India. So how do we use some of these challenges as well as these opportunities and figure out transformational strategies? And that's, I'm hoping, my fellow panel members will be addressing. We will then spend a little time discussing some of those and then throw it open to you for developing some actionable ideas for going forward and deliver on the promise that this nation has bestowed and invested in us. And I also like to take this opportunity to thank not only you who all have come here, but the faculty members that have taught us who are not here and because of whom we are where we are. So with that, I would like to request Yogi Deveshwar to start this interesting dialogue on transformational strategy. Yogi?
Thank you, Purnendu. First and foremost, may I say that I am extremely privileged to be in the midst of this intellectual capital. I might also say that even though I am also an alumnus of an IIT, I am awed by the presence of so many IITians under one roof. The subject that we are discussing today has enormous breadth. We are talking about transformational strategies for India. In the short time that we have here for the panel in 1 hour, to solve a gigantic problem of transforming a country as large, as diverse, with 1.2 billion people representing 1.2 billion aspirations, is a huge ask. The challenges are enormous. What is the transformation for? So may I first say that the reason why we are seeking a transformation is because we are looking for a life of dignity for every citizen of India. What does that mean? That means food, clothing, shelter, potable water, access to health, education, access to hygiene at a minimum. I know that in the earlier session, the gentleman had said that 250 million people are below the poverty line. Now, this is a number by setting a per capita income as a baseline for defining poverty. But if you look at World Bank, it has defined poverty at $1.25 a day. If you accept that, all of you, many of you have traveled abroad, and most of us live here, $1.25, what does it mean? What is its buying power? Then about 600 to 800 million people in India suffer from multi-dimensional poverty. So the task is huge. Then there is the issue of, somebody mentioned about climate change, global warming, and that the impact, the decelerating impact it can have on the development of our society, and what adverse impact it can have on our efforts of developing our society. So the big challenge, therefore, is to have an equitable, inclusive, and rapidly growing sustainable economy for our people, and as fast as we can, so that we can pull these 600 million people out of this multi-dimensional poverty into a life of dignity. And from there on, then we can improve their quality of life. Now, this is a subject that is so wide that I have decided, and very often when we discuss a subject like this, we play a blame game. It's very easy to always point a finger at the government and the policymakers, whether at the state level or at the central level. So I've chosen today to speak only what business can do to help, like the spirit today. What can IITians do to improve the quality of life of the Indian people? So I have confined my comments to what business can do. So the first thing that Indian business can do is to become competitive in the value that it adds. Whatever the business is doing, it must become efficient at adding that value. The second part, therefore, is to be able to compete in the globalized market. You have to have the entire value chain that must be internationally competitive. As you know, that our current account deficit today is running at 3.9 to 4% of GDP, and we are all calling it unsustainable. So there are two dimensions of it. One pointer it is that Indian business is not competitive enough to balance it on the trade account. The second dimension of this is that Indian businesses are operating relatively at a lower value addition, at a commoditized end of the business, whereas we export or we import iPhones and iPads and high value added products from overseas, capital goods with high value addition. So the second part is to make our entire value chain internationally competitive so that in the globalized market that we are part of, we can be internationally competitive. The third dimension is to move up the value chain. As I said, we are importers of iPhones and iPads, whereas we are exporting relatively lower value, although there has been significant improvement from the past, but I am only taking a view from the developmental angle, and there is a much more distance to travel. So therefore, we need to focus as business on research and development, on creating intellectual property. Now I'll do a little exercise with you, people who are sitting here. If you can indulge me for a little while, I want you to think of a brand. Assuming a child is born today, you're looking for a diaper. What is the brand that occurs to you? What is the soap and shampoo that you use for the child, and the oil, the body oil that you use for the child? As the child grows up, please think of the brand that you would use, some of you are grandparents, that you use for the baby food that you might give to your growing child. Please think of a brand when the child grows up and gets to sit at the dining table with you, what cereal brand that you have your child eat. And when it further grows up, what is the beverage? What is the brand of beverage? What is the brand of tea and brand of coffee that you begin to have? What is the brand of bottled water that all of us experience during the day? And so on and so forth, of juices. When the child grows up, when he goes out, what brand of pizza, what brand of hamburger, what brand of clothing, what brand of noodle, what brand of yogurt, what brand of milk. When he grows up further, what brand of razor, what brand of shaving cream, what soap, what shampoo. So, have you thought of brands? What brand of toothpaste and toothbrush? So I'm sure all these brands are foreign brands, and for which up to 10% of the top line goes out of the country. I'm not here to propagate that we should have any restriction. I'm here to propagate that Indian business must focus on R&D and develop intellectual capital so as to differentiate, such as to delight the consumer, so that you can build Indian brands, so that value can be created, captured, and redeployed for the Indian economy, for first in the Indian global market and then later in the global markets overseas. So this is, unless India develops intellectual capital, I don't think we are going to be able to hold our heads high and have a position of dignity of the planet of tomorrow. So this is the third dimension of what Indian business should do. After doing this, then Indian business must multiply its entrepreneurship to be able to accelerate growth. Fourthly, what Indian business must do is to contribute beyond the market. What does that mean? What it means is to not really confine itself to serving the consumer and to create wealth for the shareholder, but to create a multiplier